So there's a war going on, isn't there? There is a war going on between Israel and Palestine, and not only is history being made from what we're seeing just in real life off the internet, but on the internet, oh my god, it has just been a cesspit of the worst of the worst, just the worst. So I guess the first thing I'll start off with is, what's your, and I know this is hard because I'm asking you to boil down what you think.
Occurred is occurred.
What's your general interpretation?
Trashamancer has donated $5 for your MaxiPad fund. If there's
I was just telling your chat how, in a kind of morbid way, I'm a bit relieved that a lot of these Tankoid, Hassan, Orbiter fucking communities have just completely outed themselves for what they are. It's not actually like I'm not that
Hassan orbiters.
Like
Hassan orbiters.
But I was watching some of the like Hassan kind of waiting room streamers. They all like immediately after this happened like threw fucking like Free Palestine onto their stream titles, which it sounds like there's nothing wrong with saying Free Palestine, but when you're saying it in the middle of when that's your immediate response to an unprecedented Hamas invasion, right, of Israel's borders and what they were doing, like Free Palestine, also with a lot of ambiguity over what exactly you mean by that. Like Free Palestine to Hamas means turn all of it into an Islamic State of Palestine and get rid of all the Jews, right? And just a lot of like blind eye turning, and not so much the like, do you know the deprogram guys?
Deprogram. One second.
Neptune 32 got a tier 1 subscription.
Thanks for money.
Neptune 32 asterisk got a asterisk tier 1 asterisk subscription.
Second thought, and I wanted to react to that with you. Would you want to do that? I have.
Yeah, we can do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I was probably going to react to it on my own stream as well. So yeah, we'll do double. Sure.
We've got a few clips here that we're going to go through today. We'll start with the deprogram one. Socialist at second thought. This is Not So Erudite's post, and I'll share screens in a second, but I'm just reading it for chat. Socialist at second thought explains why Israeli captives are not civilians. This is in reference to the people that Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad kidnapped while they were in southern Israel when they crossed the border from Gaza. Kidnapped a lot of civilians, concert goers, old grandmas, migrant workers from Thailand, a whole bunch of people, and are now talking about executing them on radio and TV if Israel continues its bombardment that is killing civilians. So this is a known war crime. This is them publicly stating that it's a war crime, and if I mean, this is an endorsement of war crime. I don't know what else to call it, right? I mean, that is an endorsement of war crime. We should listen to it first before we jump into any conclusions. But the summary alone, just the few details given, like that is a war crime.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's watch.
Incentivized also very much. He says, did the Palestinians actually take civilian hostage? Incentivized also very much. He says, did the Palestinians actually take civilian hostage, or is that fake news? I don't care.
Yeah, the occupiers are not civilians. That is what it comes down to. Like if Germany, let's say Germany to be non-controversial, invaded the United States, and they said, you know what, Cincinnati, Ohio is our ancestral home, and everyone knows that's blatantly false, but they take your home, they murder your grandma, they bulldoze like your neighbor's house. Are those people civilians there? No, they're occupiers, and those are criminals. Yeah. There are no civilians there in the illegal military occupation.
Yeah. So that's number one, very beautifully put. Number two, much more importantly, the track record of Palestinians has been 1,000 times better than that of the Israeli occupation, despite the fact that Israeli occupation does not need to brutalize. They already have all the power, but they still choose to do far worse. The worst that will happen to a person in Palestinian custody is that they're going to be like auctioned off for a prisoner swap, which is the historic track record also.
God, that aged so bad. Okay, this was stupid and nonsensical when they said it at the time. It's just worse now that we've got the statement from Hamas that they're perfectly willing to execute these people, that they might kill them depending on how the situation evolves. And when I say kill, I mean like execute these, like murder them, shoot them in the back of the head, right? Depending on how
they're gonna put on Telegram, like
yeah, they're very open about it. So first things first, not all those people are settlers. In fact, I don't even know if any of them have been identified as settlers. Where this was done was in southern Israel, which is recognized even by the 1967 borders as Israeli territory, as far as I'm aware, which means it's recognized by the vast majority of the international community as Israeli territory. They were not in illegally occupied land. They're in territory, again, that'd be known as internationally recognized Israeli territory. Now, if you take the position of from the river to the sea, then I guess you can still stand on that position. But even if that's your position, and so you're putting forward that they are all illegal settlers, all of them, including the children, including the people who were born in southern Israel in these territories, that they're all illegally there. I would also ask, what do you guys think about illegal migration in other instances? But even if that is your stance, they're still civilians. Even illegal settlers are still civilians. It depends on how those settlers act. If they're taking guns and they're stealing homes, if they're burning down people's homes, then they're acting in a way that I think gives the people the right to self-defense. But these were people who were at concerts, people standing at bus stops. They didn't go around asking everyone, hey, are you a civilian, or are you a settler, or you or this, or you or that. They were just shooting everyone. Shooting and stealing and grabbing everyone. So that's the first thing. They are 100% civilians. And if they are fair game, if that's the case, then what could stop someone like me advocating for somebody to strap a bomb to their chest, walk into a Russian movie theater in Crimea, and just cap everybody there with a big click of the button? That's horrible. That's terrorism. That's illegal, wrong on a million different levels. It'd be wrong in that instance, and it'd be wrong in southern Israel, and it would be wrong anywhere to do that. I don't even, what's the point of justifying this? Is it just to be edgy? Is it just, does he not think 2 steps later of how this could be applied elsewhere? I mean, this would make basically everybody who moved to Crimea in the last 8 years fair game, wouldn't it?
It's also quite ironic that it was Second Thought saying it, because as far as I can tell, Second Thought is a white American. He's not a Native American who lives in America. And that statement that he made has just given carte blanche to any Native American to go up to his door, rape him, kill him, and then drag his defiled body stripped through the town square in probably in one of those fucking supercars, those cringe fucking supercars that he reviews in the second channel, right? Like, that would be fine, according to what he's saying. But that's like the way, because the problem, like, it's because I guess they just follow like that. They pretend to have read Fanon, and apparently the only way to do decolonization is to just murder all the settlers living there. And with Israel, it's just the most ahistorical, like, horseshit. Did you see him at the beginning saying that, like, it's blatantly not true that it's their ancestral homeland? Well, if you go back far enough, it is their ancestral homeland. Like, that's where they're traced to. Actually, Mahmoud Abbas, not long ago, spread that anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that he said that Ashkenazi Jews had no connection to the old Israelites from from the Kingdom of Israel, the Jewish kingdom, which is false. So I don't know where he got that idea from. Maybe it's too long ago. Like, there's a statute of limitations for your homeland that goes back a few thousand years, but I don't know. It's just like, it's just such a strange way to look at it, because it does actually mean that, like, how are borders drawn over time? Like, how are countries formed? Like, how many people live on stolen land? It's quite a lot of us. But you see that on Twitter as well. Like, people pose that argument about Native Americans to people, and the response is,
wait. I got the most base person
like,
in human history. Okay, 1 second. Okay, you have misjudged this person. You've misjudged Cassie Pitchard. Cassie Pitchard here, real solidarity, real ally to the cause of Native peoples. Somebody tweets out, America is also a terrorist occupation. Do we all deserve to be slaughtered by Native Americans? And her response is, listen, if Native militant groups started doing shit where I live like what Hamas is doing in occupied Palestine, I'd simply have to hand it to him. How could I possibly object? If I got murked, I'd just be like, lol, nice one, good on you. I'm a settler at the end of the day. I don't get to be precious about living on stolen land. How much, I'm sorry, but how much of a cuck loser do you have to be like, you know, if I got murdered for being born here, that'd be totally okay. Because of things I was never involved in ever in my life. I was just born here, and because I was born here, I was born to die.
You know, I feel like the way they talk about Israelis as well, it's like you can even buy like I buy the narrative that even pre-1948, the way that a lot of Jews ended up in Israel was quite like rough. Even when they were buying land off the British Empire, that wasn't just like a clean purchase that you would accept today. It was like those purchases were made of often houses that were actually lived in by tenant farmers who were thrown out of their houses. Like that's how a lot of it worked. It was a really, like even before then, it was like really ugly. But did the people who were murdered yesterday and the day before do that? Did like people in their 20s, 30s, 40s do that? Like even 50s? No. And I don't know how early in life most of us learn that you don't punish people for crimes that other members of their ethnic group did. That's insane. I don't know. But
okay, what if I was to try to steel man terrorist second thoughts opinion here, okay? Terrorist lover 69. And I was to say, look, you know, Israel has many Palestinians detained who are not Israeli citizens. You know, that in a way is keeping them captive, you know, illegally, international, you know, in a way. And I'm trying here. You know, what if they're, you know, just they're kidnapping people just for a hostage exchange? You know, that's what they said. That's what second thought said. What would you say to that?
What, that they were kidnapping people for a hostage exchange?
It's all for you know, it's all for hostages. You know, they're gonna get all the innocent Palestinians released.
I don't know. I don't know if that's like, is there much precedent for that kind of thing working? I mean, I know Hamas have sometimes succeeded with exchanges by kidnapping soldiers, not civilians. No. I don't personally believe in kidnapping civilians. I think that's kind of crazy.
It is insane.
What do you think?
And it didn't just kidnap. I mean, obviously, I don't think you could kidnap. If we gave the okay here, then we're at a point where, like, again, and I'm just trying to think about applying the situation I see around me every day. Like, Ukrainian special forces could do raids in the Crimea to just pick up random people off the street while shooting others in the head, and then bring them home and just be like, give us our people back or we're going to kill all these people. That's insane. That's terrorism. That's a death spiral you don't want to see the end of.
I think a good way to understand the way tankies think, because I've been quite intrigued by why they believe what they believe, right? And I think the best way to look at it is they're not like, they don't have like the kind of ethical foundation that most people have. Like, they're not like consequentialists, right? They don't like, maximizing human well-being doesn't really matter that much to them. Like, if you're like a Marxist-Leninist, like your first principle is like class struggle, right? You want to disempower the ruling class and empower the working class. And they think that the way you do that is by empowering the state, right? So you bring the state under the control of people who are representing the working class, like the dictatorship of the proletariat kind of thing. And then the problem with that is, if you want to do that in one country, all the capitalist countries will try to stop you. So you also have to do it in other countries. And then the next principle is weaken all the countries they consider like the capitalist empire, and then strengthen all the countries that are the capitalist empire. And that's why you get that position, which is like Chairman Mao even said, this is like, everything that our enemies do is bad, and everything that the enemies of our enemies do is good. Right. So that's like it makes perfect sense according to like their first principles. Right. Like, America supports Israel. America's bad. Everything America does is bad. Everything America's allies do is bad. There's no act against those groups that can be morally unjust. And the other side, the Palestinians, like Hamas, have every right to do anything they want. Like, it's not like an inconsistent way of thinking. It is actually very consistent. It just looks insane by any fucking normal person's standards, right? That's how I see it.
Well, I mean, it's just under these standards, that means anybody who opposes America could do literally anything, from kidnapping people, shooting random civilians, nuclear terrorism. I mean, like, where would the limit be? For
there's no limit. There's no limit. Like, okay, do you know in South Africa how like the Marxist Leninists are advocating for expropriation, right? They want to expropriate all the white farmers with no compensation.
Kill the boer, kill the white farmer.
Yeah,
I've seen the clip.
Like, we know how that policy works. They did it in Zimbabwe. Mugabe expropriated the white farmers and gave all the land to his fucking friends. And what happened? Like, they had no experience with running the farms. They had no capital investment. Foreign investment got the fuck away immediately. And Zimbabwe is a fucking shithole, right? And South Africa actually pushed for with Mandela, mashallah, he pushed for peace, reconciliation, and nation building. And despite all their problems, they have plenty of problems, South Africa is still one of the most stable countries in the continent. So it's like there's such an obvious example of why that policy fails. But again, to them, it's not about maximizing well-being. It's not about making people's lives better. It's about getting rid of the people that they consider like the bad guys, right? It's getting rid of the colonizers. That's the only principle that matters, right? It's like reversing history to this arbitrary point.
What gets me though is like this isn't gonna even if Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas carry out the most successful operation in the world, they are not pushing Israel into the sea. They don't have the means to do it, and the last people I would trust in that situation not to push the big red button would be Netanyahu and his cabinet of ghouls. I mean, that's not happening. And so best case scenario for Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas was take a bunch of land for a few days, kidnap a bunch of people, and get out, looking at by what they were trying to do. And they got the best case scenario that they could get. So I don't understand what would be even the goal of targeting civilians and doing all these things that is only going to lead to them getting bombed 10 times harder by the Israelis. I don't understand what killing these civilians accomplished in any way, or why you would defend it. Because if they were defending, is it hard for somebody to say, for the pursuance of Palestinian statehood, it would be better if they didn't record themselves selfie style, murdering and pillaging and burning? Why would it be difficult for somebody who's a Marxist-Leninist or a tanky or whatever to just say, it's okay that they're attacking Israeli tanks and Israeli military positions, but don't kill civilians. That hurts the cause, even if just from the perspective of it hurts the cause.
I don't know. Like, there again, the first principle is just to get rid of as many colonizers. Like, that's all it is. Their goals are not the same as yours or mine or anyone else's.
Every time I see one of these Israelis getting murdered in one of these videos, one of these like GoPro videos of them clearing people out from their homes and executing them, all I can think about every time I see a body is like this. Like, this is not all I can think about. One of the things I think about when I think about what is being accomplished here is there's 5,000 IDF recruits there, there's 3,000 IDF recruits there, there's 2,000 IDF recruits there from somebody watching this online, somebody seeing this on TV, somebody seeing this reported in the Israeli press. Like, it's not like these people getting killed isn't leading to less soldiers on the front line. It's going to lead to more people wanting to join the IDF and wanting to respond even more violently.
Well, I mean, we know that one big reason that Hamas might have done this was that, well, Hezbollah said this, was that they wanted to send a message to Middle Eastern countries who were normalizing relations with Israel, right? Like Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia, like, the opinion of the Middle East does still matter to them. If Israel is going to be brutalizing Palestinians, or like if they go into Gaza and they like flatten the place, then that's going to put a huge wedge between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and that might push them away from normalization.
Do you think that Hamas would purposely want to try to get the Gaza Strip leveled in order to try to break apart the normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia?
I think they want reprisals. I don't know if they want the whole place to get flattened, but because I mean, I don't think Hamas is going to go away. I don't think Israel's going to get rid of Hamas.
They've gone into exile before. They could just do it again.
They what?
They've gone into exile before. They could just do it again.
Yeah, like Israel got very ambitious in 2006. They went into Lebanon and tried to, with the goal of eliminating Hezbollah completely and consolidating the Lebanese army. It was probably one of the biggest failures in Israeli history. Hezbollah emerged more popular than ever. Lebanese Christians started being nice to Hezbollah, quite a lot of them. They started having some level of sympathy because they were fighting against the people who were bombing them. So I don't think they're going to make that mistake again.
Okay, let's move on to the next negative bad clip. Are you familiar with a guy by the name of Eugene Poyer?
No.
You've never met Eugene Poyer.
Oh, the guy who said they're killing hipsters.
Oh, yes, you are familiar with Eugene Poyer. You just maybe...
Well, I know the video, yeah.
Yeah. So, this is Eugene Poyer. He made a statement in New York at a pro-Palestine, anti-Israel rally. And you might know him from also being involved with Code Pink. Here is him at the Code Pink event saying that the only solution to end all the violence between Israel and Israel Palestine, between Ukraine and Russia, when Russia is invading, colonizing, and dominating the Ukrainian people and occupying them, the only solution is peace. We should stop sending Ukrainians the tools they need for liberation. He was heavily involved in speaking and rallying against sending the Ukrainians aid they need to push back against the occupiers, the imperialists, and the colonialists. I just wanted to give context to that before moving on to this, where he starts seemingly endorsing the violence and mocking those who were killed in terror attacks. Here's the quote before we'll play it. And as you might seen, there was some sort of rave or desert party where they were having a great time until the resistance came in, electrified hang gliders, and took at least several dozen hipsters. So he doesn't include the over 250 people who were murdered at the event. It was a rave on the border between Israel and the Gaza Strip. There were foreigners there, Germans, people outside of Israel, non-Israelis, local Israelis, workers. Over 250 people were murdered indiscriminately with others taken hostage. And this was his response to it.
And as you might have seen, there was some sort of rave or desert party where they were having a great time until the resistance came in electrified hang gliders and took at least several dozen hipsters. But I'm sure they're doing very fine despite what the New York Post says. But nobody had seen this coming.
And then he goes on to cheer on the resistance, yada yada. But he's mocking these people when over 250 people died. I mean, I don't want to do the whole compare to 9/11 thing, but when we're talking about per capita, the amount of people killed, the amount of people that were just killed in just one location, we're like per capita, we're talking about something bigger than 9/11. The math has been done. If you count the amount of Israelis that were killed in these massacres, if you were to do it, compare it per capita, per percentage to the United States, it'd be equivalent to about 7,000 people dying.
I think the last time this many Jews were killed in the space of 48 hours was World War II. I think I've seen that going around. I can't think of another time where...
Is that true?
What other point were 800 Jews killed in 2 days?
I mean, I have no clue. I can't think
I've been
of
trying
anything.
I've seen it floating around. I mean, it's already more than more Israeli deaths, at least than the entire Second Intifada.
I mean, this is just mocking victims of terror attacks. He's just calling them all dirty hipsters. They'll all be fine. They're not. 250 are dead. And he's just in his information bubble, and so he's just believing whatever he's being told by the people either whispering in his ear, or he's purposely trying to downplay the violence and the terrorism in order to, just basically ignore Israeli suffering and to ignore Jewish suffering in Israel. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Like the way some people are talking about it, it does actually sound like they have no idea what happened. That's the most charitable I can be, but I just find it hard to believe.
There's one of two things. They're either captured by the algorithm, they're in echo chambers, either interpersonal in their communities, like physically, or online, because the algorithm is going to serve you what you want to see. Or I think they're paid. And like this guy, I don't know. I think this guy could easily just either be like a paid actor, and I don't say that about a lot of people, or unbelievably stupid. It has to be one of the two. He's either a horribly malicious actor, or he's unbelievably stupid. It has to be one of the two.
Yeah, I mean, partisanship does rot your brain, so it's not surprising, but it's also like, again, it could also just be that like he believes, again, if your first principle is kill as many colonizers, the colonized have every right to do whatever they want. They probably also believe, I mean, this goes even way back to Lenin, you know, saying that like it's okay to engage in disinformation and trickery and deceit, like as long as it achieves our goals. So yeah, there are some people who just believe it's fine to lie to achieve your goals. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
That wouldn't surprise me either at all. I mean, he does work for Code Pink.
Like, I guess the thing that is also worth pointing about Hamas as well, and like the problem I maybe have with a lot of the Israeli right-wing response as well, is that although Hamas are popular,
I'm just being told this by my friend, a journalist who's watching. Apparently, he has also worked for RT.
Well, so he is fine with lying. But yeah, like although Hamas are popular, they're popular from very slim pickings. Hamas's leader is not the most popular leader in Palestine. The most popular leader in Palestine is a secularist. But like Hamas are popular through slim pickings and through desperation and through the fact that they suppress political opposition and through the fact that the PA and Fatah are basically like defanged almost. And Gazans, it's quite clear that Gazans, most of the civilians in Gaza, like had no idea this was happening, like that this was going to happen. They suffer through at the hands of. Yeah, they suffer at the hands of Hamas plenty themselves, because Hamas is one of their strategies is blending in with civilians. They don't mark their buildings. They avoid wearing uniforms. They will stay in civilian buildings and civilian spaces. And even when Israel sends out the warnings for civilians to flee, Hamas will not let them leave. So even if you are like pro-Palestinian to the nth degree, like you should not like Hamas. It just doesn't make any sense, like, because Palestinians in Gaza suffer at the hands of Hamas as well.
They've been held in elections since 2006, horribly corrupt, especially their police. I don't know if you saw my take before I move on to
and they're also very happy to sacrifice their own civilians. Yeah.
Did you see that take I got in trouble for, the one about Hamas?
Yeah.
I'll read it again for chat. I wanted to talk about one of the responses to this. Imagine if Hamas used their power to create a thriving, and I think this is the main mistake I made. I used the word thriving, but my general point still stands. Palestinian civil society, fight corruption, or benefit people to show the path towards a successful Palestinian state. Instead, we get kidnappings and throat getting slit on film. Hamas achieves nothing but revenge fantasies. My opinion is that Hamas, while acting as the quote-unquote liberator of the Palestinian people, it has boxed out everybody else that could have been involved in the liberation of Palestinian people through other means. I do not believe that Hamas's leadership necessarily want a peaceful solution, because if a peaceful solution is achieved, number one, there's going to be a question about what all the violence and all of the nonsense they've been involved in, what all that was for. But also it means it's probably going to lose their hold on power. Palestinians are going to look inward. They're going to look at Hamas. They're going to look at, hey, they're horribly corrupt. They haven't had an election since 2006. They have crushed all opposition, arrested those who oppose them, arrested critics, disappeared people in the middle of the night. I think that these people probably should not rule the newly united Palestinian people. I think that's a terrible idea. I don't believe that Hamas is bringing the Palestinian people forward towards liberation. I think if Palestinian people achieve liberation, it would be in despite of Hamas, not because of Hamas. What do you think what I have to say? Am I too shrill?
I wouldn't have used the word thriving, but otherwise, yeah, the Hamas are, if their goal is actually peace and liberation, then yeah, then they would be doing different things. That's not their goal, though. Their goal is to terrorize and to kill as many fucking Jews as possible. That's their goal, right? Hamas were like, what were they? They were founded in 1987, spun off from a charity group really linked to the Muslim Brotherhood. They weren't very popular when they started. They only had like 3% of support from 3% of Palestinians. They were very, very on the back foot throughout the 90s when the Oslo Accords were happening. And I think the first election for the Palestinian parliament, I think Arafat got like 90% of the vote. Hamas boycotted it, but they wouldn't have had more than 15%. They were way behind because at that point, negotiations were showing a sign of promise. And that promise was embraced by most Palestinians, and Hamas people weren't interested in that. They were interested in people who looked like they were going to achieve a peaceful solution. When that didn't come, and then the Second Intifada came around, things got a lot more hopeless. People got a lot more frustrated. And then when Israel disengaged from Hamas unilaterally, Sharon said, we're not negotiating with anyone. We're just going to do things on our own terms. They leave Gaza and don't consult the PLO, and they make them look completely impotent. As soon as Israel leaves, Hamas fires their machine guns in the air and says, we achieved this. Violence achieved this, not negotiations. Like, we didn't need to negotiate for 1 minute, and Gaza got evacuated. And then, of course, they build on the back of that. Sorry, important spreadsheets, this fucking retard in your chat saying how Israel made Hamas. I guarantee, I'll bet you a fucking $1 million I know more about Israel and the origins of Hamas than you do.
Damn,
you can tell me.
You want to come in here, important spreadsheets? You want to talk to Loner? You seem very confident. I'll bring him in. I don't ask Loner for consent. Okay, Loner. He can't hurt you. Oh, wait, you'll come in actually? Okay. If you jump into the Discord and get in the waiting room, or I think there's a thing for it. Check. It's called chats. Stream waiting room. Get in there, and we'll both jump in, and you can come on, and you can tell Lonerbox how he's wrong in every way. But until that happens, let's continue. I got a response to this that really confused me, right? And I need social validation, Loner. That's what I'm seeking from. Are you familiar with the Vanguard podcast?
Yeah.
They responded, truly baffled by these takes from Ukraine supporters. Do the Palestinian people not deserve the same solidarity in the fight against oppression, annexation, invasion, and genocide? Does only Ukraine get to violently resist invasion? I've been pretty open, and I think most Ukrainians agree with this, that corruption is something that undermines Ukraine's struggle. It would be accurate, I think, for somebody to criticize the Ukrainian government for its corruption and say that its corruption has made it so the West didn't feel confident in large part to send a lot of the weapons that they wanted to. It wasn't the only reason, but it was one of them. And that corruption also undermined the military from within, as people saw in 2014 and 2015 when the ATO, the anti-terrorism operation, was going. You can criticize the government of Ukraine while also acknowledging that Ukrainians should be liberated. You can criticize Hamas while also acknowledging that Palestinians should be liberated. Not to mention, if Ukrainians went out and started massacring random Russians, obviously that should be condemned, and I think it would be undermining Ukraine's liberation struggle.
I also find it so strange because I'm pretty sure if Ukrainians were storming through towns in Crimea and targeting, indiscriminately slaughtering Russian civilians, I think people would have a problem with that, actually. I don't think Ukraine should do that. They're acting as if the Palestinian people deserving solidarity in their fight against oppressors. Yeah, people like Mandela and the ANC deserved solidarity. I don't really know if the people who were necklacing their political opponents, like putting fucking tires around them, dousing them in gasoline and setting them on fire, deserved it, right? There's different practices that deserve solidarity and the ones that don't. I think, like, when people keep saying, have you seen this Mott and Bailey where people are like, Palestinians have the right to use armed resistance? Yeah, they do actually. They do have the right to target infrastructure and to target strategically in a way that might make the occupation more and more unmanageable, especially in the West Bank. They do have a right to do that, actually. Yeah, I wouldn't be against that. That's a fucking occupation. Yeah, but that's not what Hamas are doing. They targeted a festival of hippies.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. When you look at everybody complaining online, nobody's saying like, oh my God, that poor IDF tank. Oh my God, these military checkpoints. I mean, I've seen Israelis talking about the Israeli POWs and how they're probably not being treated quite well. But that is a war crime. But I don't see very many people complaining about IDF positions being attacked or tanks being attacked. Because that's war. That's how war works. All the complaints I'm seeing is about the civilians getting mowed down. Just like when I see Palestinians complaining, most of the stuff I'm seeing, 99% of it, is them complaining about buildings being leveled by the Israeli Air Force and not like Hamas fighters getting shot after they've looted some civilian's car that they murdered.
Well, yeah, that's the big difference, right? And you can even, people talk about liberation struggles from the past. I mean, there's a reason like Mandela is one of the biggest heroes in that, is because he was one of the most successful in leading a liberation struggle. And in his own words, when he was on trial, he even said that of all the options for violence that they chose sabotage. They chose to target infrastructure primarily over people, and one of the main reasons for that was that they wanted to make the country ungovernable, to push foreign investment out, and to make the people realize that apartheid just couldn't sustain itself. But the other side of them choosing to go only for infrastructure was that they didn't want to achieve equal rights and then just end up in a society like full of bitterness and resentment and hatred and violence. And that's why they one of their considerations was future race relations. They wanted to promote the idea of a rainbow nation, and they wanted to assure white South Africans that they had a future in that country. And there are Palestinian militants who have said the same thing, like who will say that like they're not against violent action, but they do want to achieve peace with their future neighbors who they consider Israel. But that's not who was leading the charge in the last couple of days, right?
Yeah, I just want to respond to a comment in chat. Real question, Dylan. If a Ukrainian national commits a terrible crime against Russian civilians, would it change your pro-Ukraine sentiment? Okay, let's change up the scenario a little bit, because this wasn't a like Palestinian national, right? This was Hamas agents working with Palestinian Islamic Jihad agents, with Hamas being the ruling party in Gaza, right? Invading with a gigantic operation and having dozens upon dozens of their soldiers mowing down and murdering and kidnapping people, right? So it's not a single Ukrainian national, just like it wasn't a single Palestinian national like here. If the Ukrainian government did something similar to what we've just seen here, of course that would have to make me rethink my support in aid, but it would not make me rethink the need for Ukrainians to be liberated. Because whether or not that happened or not, that doesn't mean that Ukrainians now don't deserve self-determination, or now all the Ukrainians deserve to have their culture erased, be ethnically cleansed, their property rights taken away. They deserve to be in mass graves. The Russians should still leave, but obviously that would change what weapons I would be comfortable, or if anything I would be comfortable sending to the Ukrainians, if the government was behaving like this, and then they were explicitly like, woohoo, yay, we did it, yeah, this is great, and we're going to execute all the POWs if we do. If the Ukrainian government started engaging in that behavior, then I would have to. I would have to change my position, because I don't want American weapons being used for war crimes that they're bragging about and openly filming and posting online and praising. Like if I looked around and I saw the entire Ukraine sphere just being like, kill every single Russian, murder them all, and I could tell that they meant it, then yes, that would change my position on aid. but that still wouldn't change the position on Ukrainians should rule their own selves. They should have self-determination. All peoples deserve self-determination.
Where's this guy who wants to tell me about how Israel created Hamas?
Oh yeah, that guy said he wanted to tell you about how Israel created Hamas. He's not in there. He didn't join. Apparently, he was fibbing. He was lying. Can you imagine that?
I mean, I love the assumption, right? Like, are Palestinians so fickle that they just threw their popular support behind an Israeli-created entity? Like, what the fuck? No, Hamas created Hamas. What Israel did was that before Hamas was Hamas, when they were a charity called Mujama al-Islamiyah, Israel... Wait, the guy's joined the Discord, Dylan.
Has he? Has he actually joined the Discord? Let me see.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's not in a voice channel.
Oh, you're in the you're checking the welcome thing. Now he's just he has joined. Wait, do you want to move over there just to make it easier if he actually jumps in? Owner?
Yeah.
Yeah, want to jump in the stream rating room, I'll drag you in, okay?
Okay.
Oh boy. Welcome back. Let's continue. We don't know if he'll even actually join or not.
It's okay, we'll wait.
Got you. But let me go through a few more things because I'm trying to do a segment here. I don't agree in terrorism in most instances. There's one I do agree in terrorism. I think terrorism's okay. I specifically believe that anybody who posts fake war footage from video games or reposts old war footage, they should be biblical. I believe the punishment should be biblical. In the Bible, haha, I'm gonna repost this fake war footage, you'd be immediately teleported to an actual war zone and then killed by a Roman spear, right? In this version, whoever reposts this old war footage should be immediately placed on the rooftop of a building bombed by the IDF or put in the rifle range of one of the Hamas gunmen.
Do you know how
they are awful, subhuman, trash, all of them. Everybody who does this. You're horrible. Horrible. All right, continue.
Do you know how people say that people they don't like should kill themselves?
I would never say that.
It's a bit out of date. You know how people say they should video game themselves? That's out of date as well. But now I think any white person who tries to push this idea that you're a fair game if you're a colonizer, I think they should be told to decolonize themselves. I think that is
true.
a very...
I mean, they should join the movement as soon as possible.
Yeah.
They should join the movement. I mean, what better way to challenge colonialism than to challenge a little colonizer in yourself? Look, I'm not saying that everybody who is saying that all people who descend from colonizers should be killed should recreate the Bjork tapes, but I am saying that. Anyway, where were we? Oh yes, let's move on to the next one quick before he jumps in, if he jumps in. I wanted to switch gears here. I feel like
He's busy reading the Wikipedia about why Israel...
I think he might be reading...
He's watching the blowback video with Mehdi Hassan.
He is. He's watching... He's reading every Mehdi Hassan interview. He's going back, dragging up all the wikis. I wanted to talk about this terrible take against the Palestinian cause for liberation. So this is from Assad Defender, who was Elon's favorite Assad account, one of his two favorite Assad accounts, before he then deleted the posts praising them. Any pity or remorse I have ever had for the Palestinian cause is now totally gone. I'm imagining the Revolutionary War period, one of the British loyalists getting dragged out and tarred and feathered or killed or hung, which did happen. And you're saying, oh, democracy was cool until they lynched a guy. No, that's stupid. Obviously the lynching was wrong, but now democracy doesn't just become bad because of an action like this. Self-determination doesn't become bad because of what Hamas did. Palestinians didn't just all lose the right to ever determine their own affairs because of what Hamas did there. It's ridiculous. What do you mean? Any pity for the Palestinian cause is now totally gone. So we're just giving up the cause of people to rule themselves in self-determination and being okay with the continued illegal occupation because of the actions of Hamas here. What about, I mean, I don't want to do the whataboutisms and just start talking about all of the crimes that Israel has committed, whether that means now Israel doesn't have a right to exist. But I feel a deep inclination to do that, because that, I mean, it feels like it's only fair.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sure I spoke to some people who were saying that they had the impression of how many people in the streets in Gaza were celebrating as dead bodies were dragged back that they could like stomp on and shit. But like, those are the people who came out into the streets. They don't represent 2 million people in Gaza. The people who weren't interested in it, or were taken aback by it, or were shitting themselves, or were taking shelter in the UN schools, they weren't on camera. They were hiding. It's not like everyone in Gaza likes Hamas. It's not like everyone in Gaza, like, actually a lot of people in Gaza probably hate Hamas. They can't express that though, because they'll get in trouble, right? The way that they intimidate civilians is like a very instrumental thing to their practice, right? Like, I think, have you not seen the story about the guy who might be the mastermind behind this attack? The guest, they call him.
No, I haven't. What's the story?
So the guest is this Hamas sort of like high profile guy who his entire means of survival is that he stays in the houses of sympathizers and just moves between them, the guest. But it's quite clear that the people, not everyone is willing to have him there, right? They have to, you know? Like, that's a very big part of Hamas's strategy, is to blend in with civilians. And it's not always the civilian's choice. Yeah.
Somebody just said, Dylan, is there any limit to your self-determination stance? Like, do a tribe of aggressive cannibals deserve self-determination? I think it all depends on how the number one, not the best comparison, but we'll entertain it anyway. It all depends upon what the cannibals are doing. Like, if the cannibals are just eating each other in their little cannibal nation, then ultimately, like, that's their own business, I guess. They're all cannibalizing each other. It is what it is. But if there's groups in there that are being cannibalized by them, then I feel like either the international community has to withdraw those people out, or they need to intervene to protect them, to prevent genocide. So there is moments where you can intervene and stop the affairs that are going on if it's affecting others. But at the end of the day, the cannibals should be able to manage their own affairs. Like, it would mean probably they'd end up all destroying themselves, but I mean, that's their business. Also, can I just say, it's kind of an unrealistic scenario, but I do still think that allowing people to rule their communities by putting individual input into their administration through democracy, through the choice of representatives, I think that this is the best way to rule societies. I think it's much better than a top-down approach where a monarch or a dictator or some military junta makes all the decisions from top down for their own interests and not the interests of those who live on the local level. I think that democracy and the representation in government and sovereignty, being able to rule over yourselves, I think that has been proven time and time again to be the best system of government. And the longer we continue this occupation, the longer we continue these illegal settlement expansions, the longer we continue this state of affairs, the worse the situation is going to get, the more violent the situation is going to get, and all we're going to do is perpetuate the cycle of violence. And so we have to break out of it. And the only way I think to break out of it is to allow the people who are in a hotbed of extremism and poverty to have some avenue of allowing themselves out of that. And that would mean self-determination. That would mean an end to the blockade. It would mean an end to the settlement expansion. It'd mean a bunch of things that would allow the Palestinians to rule over themselves. But just because the Palestinians rule over themselves doesn't mean they'd fix everything. Like we've said before, Hamas is terrible at domestic politics. They're good at getting people angry and fighting the Israeli occupation. They're not good when it comes to their civil society. They're not good when it comes to elections. They're not good when it comes to corruption. And I have a feeling that once Hamas loses that, outer enemy that they can point to and say we must all unite to fight against, their support base is going to start crumbling. And then they're going to start cracking down harder. And you could have a situation where the Palestinian people are turning more and more and more and more against Hamas. I think a lot of the reason why Hamas has such a stranglehold on power now, and there's not really a lot of other options to support opposition to Israel, is because they have such a stranglehold in society and they snuff out any sort of dissent at its root. If you allow a seed to grow and prosper into a bush or a tree, then it's going to have more of an impact. But if you snuff it out at the start, then obviously it can't develop, and they don't allow the opposition to develop. That's how dictatorships all around the world function.